Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us on this panel hosted by 10D and Samsung Next. We'll take just a few more moments to get everybody settled in and join us before we start. So, hi everybody again, and thanks for joining us this evening for the panel Giving Patients a Voice, the Power of Patient-Reported Outcomes, hosted by 10D and Samsung Next. And I would like to start by introducing 10D. For those of you who do not know us, so 10D is a venture capital fund. We manage $350 million in asset under management, and we focus on early stage investments from pre-seed through Series A. We invest in Israeli tech and entrepreneurs, and we seek those projects and companies that are here to make a real dent and disruption in places that are yet to be disrupted. We are generalists, and our portfolio consists of, as you can see on the bottom left, many companies in various industries and domains. However, we do put a major focus on digital health, given our belief that this is a tipping point in the industry, which is ready to make real disruptions, and we have the right entrepreneurs, the right technology, and the right motivation from the industry to receive those solutions. I'll introduce the 6 companies that 10D has in our portfolio that are digital health focused. Stuff That Works is doing crowdsourcing for chronic conditions. Claire Labs is doing remote vital signs monitoring. Day 2 is using microbiome science to treat diabetics. One Step is changing the way physiotherapy is done, the entire ecosystem. And MedOrion was bringing tech and marketing tools into the health plans, mainly in the US. Our team consists of 3 partners. Yael Zilka, who was the founding partner and managing partner in Magma and raised 5 funds with Magma before starting 10D, along with Rotem Eldar, my partner, who was previously a partner with Gemini, and myself. We also have Natalie Bloch on the line, and I will introduce her in detail in a few moments. Now, the reason we're all here is because we all see and believe that the digital health ecosystem is booming. The entire industry is growing. Over $80 billion in funding last year. Over 675 Israeli startups in the digital health domain, and 3 unicorns, K-Health, Immunai, and Insightec. We believe that this is a tipping point in where the industry is going. And for that reason exactly, we structured and built 10D's Digital Health Advisory Board with the sole mission to help entrepreneurs take on the challenges and opportunities presented in digital health, given everything that we don't know and the fact that we have a large network that can help assist and support our partners and entrepreneurs. And now we're going to have Reut from Samsung Next introduce Samsung Next.
Thank you, Itai. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here. I'm Reut. I'm from the investment team of Samsung Next. Samsung Next is one of Samsung venture arms. It belongs to Samsung Electronics, and it's a corporate VC. We invest in multiple verticals. Healthcare is one of them, and you can see here in the slides our portfolio company in healthcare. In addition to healthcare, we invest in fintech, blockchain, media, cyber, and AI. And we invest stage agnostic from pre-seed to pre-IPO. Our headquarters in the Silicon Valley, and we also have an office in Tel Aviv. Some of our leading portfolio companies, Yoma Therapeutics, which you also have a representative in the panel from the company today, HealthIL, Day 2, Big Health, and other strong names. And I will hope you will enjoy the panel. Thank you. Itai, back to you.
So without further ado, as I mentioned, 10D, in order to take on the challenges and opportunities, started the Digital Health Advisory Board, and we have Dr. Natalie Bloch, who joined us 2 years ago, and is spearheading the focus that we have on building that advisory board, and she's been instrumental in doing that over the last year. Natalie spent 14 years in Boston as a primary care physician and an internist at Mount Auburn, a Harvard affiliate hospital. She's also a graduate, a fellowship at the Harvard Medical School for Innovation in Healthcare Delivery. And Natalie was most recently the head of the Big Data and AI at ARC Innovation Center at Sheba Medical Center. And we are very lucky to have her on board and tonight with us moderating this panel. Natalie, thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy and excited to be here and to moderate the panel of those exciting people. The idea of the panel was really to bring different stakeholders that have influence of redesigning healthcare delivery, where the focus is on patient-centered care, patients' engagement, and addressing patient-reported outcome when we deal with health technologies. So we actually brought different stakeholders. The representative of the academia is Dr. Ronen Rosenblum. He is the director, the Unit for Innovative Healthcare Practice and Technology and Business Development Center for Patient Safety, Research and Practice at the Brigham and Women's Hospital and assistant professor at Harvard Medical School. Welcome, Ronen. Asaf Kleinbort will represent the tech startup. He is the CEO of MedOrion, as you heard Itai mentioning it. MedOrion is a startup developing a health behavior management platform used by leading US health plans. Dr. Ricky Coy will represent today the tech industry. He is the deputy head of digital health, Samsung Electronics America, assistant clinical professor at Stanford University School of Medicine. And Dr. Arash Yesai, he's a provider, a clinician, and represents his company. He is a clinical director at Yoma Therapeutics, an academic pediatrician in London. So we'll start with our questions. Ronen, as an expert and international leader in patient-centered care, patient experience, and patient engagement, can you provide us with information about the concept of patient-centered care, the trends, and the current situation?
Sure, Natalie. So first, let me say just thank you for the 10D leadership and Natalie and all for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to talk about this timely important topic. So I will try to very briefly, because it's a panel, to share, talk a little bit about the trends of patient-centered care. This is my area of expertise, with and without technologies, and to provide some information about that. So I'm going to take some little bit the role of policy and academia here, but later on maybe I will also share the business side of things. So just putting things in a concept, when we're talking about patient-centered care, obviously in order to get a better understanding of the concept of patient-centered care, because I see a lot of companies that I see every week under my responsibility of innovation in Harvard and at the Brigham, that talks about patient-centered care, and everybody is doing patient engagement. So what is patient engagement? What is patient-centered care? So let's give a little bit some context about that. So if we'd like to get understanding of this domain, we need to go many years backwards, which I will not do here. I just want to mention a tipping point, like an important year, which was 2001, where the IOM came with a significant report crossing the quality chasm that I'm sure that all of you knows about and identify big gaps in quality of care. And the committee proposed 6 domains for improvement. One of them was patient-centered, or what they call patient-centeredness. So I think this was the tipping point, just to say where the journey, I think, really triggered. Although patient-centered care, you're going to the nursing side, it's like 30 years, 50 years. I think the next step was for countries following this committee and committee from the UK and Australia to establish some initiatives. And one of the main initiatives, the first one, from a policy standpoint, was to establish a national patient experience survey. So the HCAPS in the US, that basically was the first one to create a benchmark that all of the hospitals are using the same survey and the same methodology. Not only doing that, so it brought really the patient experience as a main component of patient-centered care that we're talking here in this session, important session, to the forefront. So basically forcing all the hospitals that are working with the CMS to use the same survey. Not only that, before it was published in a public domain that enabled patients and others to compare hospitals, but then they took it one step further and basically tied patient experience into the reimbursement system. And I can talk about that later on. Why it's important in the context of this panel and these companies, because, and I'm sure that the companies that are dealing with patient experience or a component of patient experience know that there's a big, use case that basically it's not just improving quality of care. It's tied into the ROI or the bottom line of institutions. That's what I'm mentioning. The next thing, without getting deep into this subject, but I think it's important because I'm talking with so many companies, because we're talking about patient-centered care. And since all these reports started, many organizations around the world started to promote patient-centered care, like the WHO, ISQA, IHI, and each one of them decided that they have their own terminology. So you might think that now I'm talking from my perspective from the academia, and who cares about definition, but you care about definition, because when you guys going to a hospital, if you're going to Beth Israel in Boston, or you're going to another hospital and they're using different terms, you might say that you're dealing with patient-centered care, but you're not. And let me give you just one example. Some organizations are talking about patient-centered care, which is focusing really on a patient and family, and some people-centered care or person-centered care that are talking about the patients, but also the providers. So basically with the burnout of clinicians, now you have all of a sudden that. And if the focus of the institution that you're targeting is in people-centered care, you might want to your technology, if possible. You don't need to change the focus of your technology, but to think about that. So there is no single definition, but I think I will encourage people on the call here to look and to see what they are related to the definition, as well as the patient engagement. There's like tons of definitions. And this is important. What happened with patient-centered care? Very briefly. So in one end, a lot of institutions around the world, countries, institutions really promote that, incorporate that into their vision, mission, and really accepting technology and stuff, and a lot of initiative. By the way, when we're talking about patient-centered care, very important point from my perspective, there is, and here we are focusing a lot on high tech or patient-facing technology, digital hub. This is like the hype, everybody. We shouldn't forget, the low tech. It's all about interpersonal communication. Without that, I saw a lot of technology that didn't work. So in one end, you see a lot of progress in organization throughout the world that making in terms of patient-centered care, but based on a lot of studies, including a lot of my studies in different countries, UK, Denmark, Israel, here in the States, there's a huge room for improvement. And there's many reasons that I'm not going to get now to that, but one of them is resistance of clinicians, mainly physicians, to use technologies that engaging or empowering patients. In the last part that I will talk very briefly, I will talk about, I'm moving now to the technology, because I talked up until now just to give you the scope of patient-centered care that health information technology is riding on that. So when we're talking about, patient empowerment and engagement via health information technology, obviously it's a big buzzword. And when we're thinking about that, why really it's one of the biggest trends, and I think it's going to be even bigger than today, because all of us going to conferences or talking with people, and you're saying, okay, patient-centered care, people are talking about it like 10 years, or even HIT, everybody talks about AI, predictive analytics. I believe, and you can find some reference that I published, that there is two trends that run riding in parallel. One trend is the patient-centered care, patient engagement, patient experience, that we're going to talk in this panel, obviously. It's a big one, that patient is driving, healthcare, and you want to put them in the center. But the other piece is the health information technology, digital application and AI, predictive analytics, and so on. And not always two trends are working together. And I think there's two trends that working together and basically really creating kind of a perfect storm, because the patient-centered care and the patient-facing technology works very well together. The last thing I will say, and this is completely from the academia, because I see one of my role, is basically to assess technology. Everybody is coming and using the word engagement, and people think that patient engagement equal a good thing. I have a lot of 13 years of experience assessing technology, where people thought that they are doing engagement to find out that they didn't change the needle in terms of outcome, or add even a negative outcome. So not everything that that we are stating that we are doing patient engagement or family engagement, by the way, it's always family engagement, basically lead to a positive. So we have to make sure how we assess that and why we are doing that. And the last thing that I will say, that there are people that using the term, looking at patient engagement as the blockbuster drug of the century. I heard it a lot, even in the news. And I don't know if it's the blockbuster drug, although this is my profession, but I will say if it is a drug, like any drug, there is a positive symptoms and a negative symptoms. So you as the owner of, of these, technologies and the customers have to make sure that you understand the positive and the negative of every technology. And there is mixed out with them. So I will finish here, and later I will be happy to collaborate more.
Thank you, Ronen, for your insights. I believe that when you say negative, you mean for the side effects and the things that you didn't really mean to create, but were created by using technology. And I hope that we will be able to raise some of them during this panel when we come to challenges maybe in implementing technologies.
Perfect.
Asaf, as a representative of startup companies that really try to deal with patient-centered and engagement, can you a little bit share with us your experience? How is your company dealing with this type of challenges, and what the needs are in healthcare delivery are going to, especially when you are actually facing mostly the US health market?
Sure, Natalie, and hi everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. So Natalie, as you said, at MedOrion, we develop a health behavior management software. There are a handful of US-based health plans that use our SaaS solution to manage and to impact their members' behavior. They use it across different measures that are key to their business model, like colonoscopies, mammographies, other kind of cancer screenings, vaccinations, drug adherence, and so on. And now the way we see it, and it relates to what you said earlier and what Ronen said, and I'll reference the specific pointers. We live in a world that healthcare landscape constantly changes. So for health organization to be truly patient-centric, they first must understand their members. They need to understand why people are making health-related decisions, why someone behaving the way they do. And most importantly, they must embed this understanding or health behavior aspect in general in everything they do, in their overall clinical and risk management that they do. Now, when we look at what is happening today, most healthcare organizations are analyzing data and trying to establish a probability for a member or a patient in other kind of organization to take a certain action. They try to, you call it sometimes propensity in the marketing space. They try to find out what is the chance of someone doing colonoscopy, mammography, refilling his prescription. And this is usually done manually and not in an ideal and scalable manner. And again, the way we see it, there's a need for technology that looks at the patient as a complex individual, that they are living in dynamic environment of health services, progressing, changes in guidelines, changes in plan offering. There are a ton of new telehealth services that are coming every day. And eventually, all of this causes the health behavior of people to constantly change all the time. So we need a technology that relates to this real life scenarios and does it in a scalable way. And to my last part, and this is where I refer to Ronen, how we do it, how we tackle this pain. So we see a three pillar kind of approach, very Israeli way to look at things. We start by modeling health behavior, by understanding why is a specific patient, avoiding is not refilling his statin prescription. Is it because of the side effect? Is it because of cost issue? It's different. You cannot treat it the same way. If you treat it the same way, what Ronen said earlier will happen. You might cause damage. And then you need to model it and measure it. Again, relates to what Ronen said earlier. Measure it is as important as actually understanding. Now, understanding is not enough. Going to the physician that Ronen spoke about them, if you throw data about health plan guys, physician, it doesn't matter, it doesn't help. You need to make sure your insight, the software insights are embedded in workflows, in actually interaction with members, in any interaction. And interaction with members vary. It can be patient portal, email, text, a call center, a care manager that is handling a patient, even physician interaction. The information needs to get to all of these endpoints in a sense. And finally, and this is where I really relate to what Ronen said about member experience, if you look at it in a naive way, you'll harm member experience because there are many members. Some plans handle millions, some plans handle hundreds of thousands members, and there are many guidelines to promote. You cannot bombard someone with everything all the time. You will eventually cause abrasion and damage, and you'll do worse. You'll use the negative part of the pill that Ronen said. So you need to have, and this is where we provide a kind of a management capabilities. We call it governance capability that allows you to prioritize between different communication, between different measurements, and eventually to improve member behavior while maintaining member experience, which is as important as behavior. That's it. And thanks, Ronen, for preparing the ground form.
Yeah, there was a logic.
Nice.
That's very interesting that you're able actually with your company to cover so many deep and thorough domains in understanding people, how they make decisions. And it's not only for the population, like I said, it's not only like for big population, but really for individuals within a population management for the healthcare organizations. Very impressive. Thank you, Asaf. Ricky, a question for you today. Can you share with us the strategy and vision of a company like Samsung when it comes to patients' engagement and the use of health technologies? Even maybe examples that you have, challenges.
Absolutely. And first of all, again, as everyone else was saying, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this really distinguished panel. And what a bunch of already some really exciting ideas have been put on the table. But let me start by saying, as a physician, one of the hardest things is not just educating patients, but helping them make healthier choices. I have a hard time getting even my own family members to complete, a complete course of antibiotics. And in healthcare, obviously, we call it adherence and compliance. But in the equivalent in the tech industry is engagement, right? So, at Samsung, we believe that, our success and core expertise starts in consumer technology. These are technologies that, hundreds of millions of people are using in the form of smartphones around the world. In terms of our smartphones, as well as 70% of American homes who have, a Samsung technology in their home. These are technologies that are comfortable with, they know how to use, it's part of their own kind of workflow, so to speak. And so we believe that, that a lot of the hard work has been done already, that we're already in the hands. And so now the question is, how do we make or help people make healthier choices. And we really believe that consumer technology has a role to play to move the needle in terms of health. So if I were to use just one specific example, we've had a multi-year partnership with Kaiser Permanente, one of the largest healthcare systems in the United States, well known to be vertically integrated as a provider as well as payer, to deliver a cardiovascular disease solution that's led by one of our smartwatches. It's a home-based cardiac rehab program. And the challenge with cardiac rehab, of course, is that while it is the current standard of care for a range of cardiovascular diseases, it's something that's very difficult for patients to complete. After you have a heart attack, it's the number one issue in your mind, but as weeks go on and on, people have other priorities they need to tend to, and sometimes their cardiovascular health becomes secondary after those things. And so we've created a program where you can do this from home. And we've had over 10,000 patients complete this program and already showing incredible results, such as reduced readmission rates, reduced secondary cardiac events, and et cetera. And I think the key around that is having a device like a smartwatch that helps guide people to do the healthier choice, to remind them to take their medications, to do their activities in terms of notifications, but also real-time guidance during those activities, collecting that baseline heart rate, collecting heart rate recovery, and going back to our point about patient-reported outcomes, creating ways for patients to actually document in real time their experience, their rate of perceived exertion, their level of associated chest pain, nausea, all those key pieces of information that are incredibly difficult to collect on history after the fact. So I think that there are many ways that we can look towards consumer technologies to really, help patients make healthier choices.
Sorry, perfect. So yes, we all realize, right, that our smartphones and the technologies around us that are any way part of our life can be used towards this meaningful challenge and aim and goal. Just for the audience, please feel free to ask questions to list them on the chat area. We will have time at the end of this panel for questions. So feel free to address them. Arash, as a clinician and very close to the implementation side of the technologies, can you share with us how you established maybe evaluation of technologies, or do providers collaborate with efforts? What type of challenges do you face when you try to bring something new into the field?
Firstly, thank you so much for inviting me to contribute to this fascinating topic, and I've been really interested by the discussion so far. I think everyone here recognizes that patient-centered evaluation is such a vital currency in this industry. We remember so frequently that patients are at the center of what we do, and it's really important that as we progress with lots of these innovations, we need to make sure that evaluation evidence is central to those activities. And the way that we at Huma have tried to approach that is just by making evidence and evaluation a part of regular business, normalizing what we do in all of the deployments we do, whether that's in healthcare or in life sciences. We try very much from the beginning to have those conversations prospectively, so making sure we embed evaluation as we're designing a product or a service. And we also do that for as many different areas in digital health and innovations that we can. So, for example, a lot of our work involves in decentralized clinical trials, essentially supporting research remotely and at scale. And one of the things that we wanted to do actually was to evidence and demonstrate that this way of working was as good, if not better, from a collection perspective, traditional research. So as an example, one thing that we did is we embedded our platform within an existing longitudinal study so that we can demonstrate, actually, compared to traditional research, this is what the evidence is going to be. This is the outcome it's going to give you. And we found having those kind of open conversations, being willing to test your product in that open and transparent way, has enabled us to have lots of different collaborations and to work with many other providers and partners to put patients at the center of that decision making. some of the challenges often do come down to thinking about what it is you want the evaluation to look at, and to think about the different sort of metrics you're looking at. One of the ways that we overcome that is by trying to think a lot about hearing the patient voice through qualitative studies. So in some of the deployments we've done, for example, in heart failure, it's quite difficult to think about a quantitative metric that fairly reflects that patient's trajectory and journey. And actually often what's really helpful is to capture some of the patient experience through semi-structured interviews, through mixed methods analysis, and actually show that it transforms the way that patients are able to use healthcare and engage with healthcare. And some of the feedback, for example, we've got from that we probably wouldn't have captured if we just looked at, the data and the outcomes and the biomarkers, is things like patients saying, now that I can see what my blood pressure and my markers are doing when I take the medication, I'm now way more engaged in my healthcare, and I really understand what my care teams are doing. And it's that sort of rich information that I quite like using mixed methods. What we also tried to do from the very beginning, and I think this is kind of where the industry is certainly going, and I think we're increasingly seeing this both kind of on the supplier side, the payer side, the provider side, is the rigor of that academic evaluation. So for us at Huma, our goal is always, whenever we do an evaluation, is to do it to a standard that we can publish it in a peer-reviewed journal. Because I think that degree of transparency, organizations who are willing to sign up to that degree of transparency, that's really a really encouraging sign. But I think the academic side is great, but actually, as many colleagues in this call have pointed out, digital health is a little bit different from traditional health. There are some nuances to it. The way that patients, clinicians, researchers engage the platform's a bit different. And from us, actually, one really important aspect of that evaluation is not just from the academic side, but actually looking at the user experience at almost a prototype level. And so I feel one of the reasons why we've had really great success with the adherence on all our platforms is actually the huge amount of painstaking effort over a number of years involved in putting patients at the center of that design. Because I think we all know you can design the most kind of efficacious or potentially effective solution, but if patients aren't going to engage with that, aren't going to find it engaging, useful, exciting, we're never going to be able to realize the benefits of that. And so what we're really excited by is that prospect of marrying the best of both worlds, the best of kind of the commercial world, where we use those sort of methodologies to improve the design, putting patients at the center of that and making sure it's the interface is what they need. And then the academic side, making sure that we capture that patient experience in a really rigorous way and have a degree of transparency so that we can continue to share that learning and contribute to the growing evidence base that's out there.
Perfect. So one question that comes to my mind when I hear all of you is, you mentioned Arash, congestive heart failure, and Ricky also mentioned follow-up on patients, cardiac patients, and Asaf on maybe screening tests for cancer. So, but do you think, and this is a question open to all of you, that there's a difference between how we approach patients' engagement in different diseases, or is it the same thing? Okay, we'll just engage and get the input from the patients when it comes to the whole series of chronic diseases and cancers that we try to handle. I mean, do you understand what I'm trying to ask? If there's a difference between the way that we will engage patient, maybe the technologies that we will use when it comes to different types of diseases, or is it the same? Is it a one thing for all types of treatments and healthcare management?
I can share our view, which is probably different than the other guys over here. We usually look at a mass of patients, thousands of members. And then the answer is yes and no. So yes, it's the same process. You have to understand the primary barrier to action, the secondary barrier to action, to understand where in the, let's say, in the behavior change circle, the patient reside. Is it very early? Is it very late? And you have to treat it differently. This is similar to everything, from just convincing a member to give you his email to convincing a member to schedule colonoscopy. It's the same kind of theory. However, for different actions, there are different decision theories, and the academy here really helps. There's actually, we used to say 70 years of behavioral science researching these kind of different decision models, and it's very different for preventative stuff, for treatment stuff, for administrative stuff. It's different kind of decision models, and you have to embed this difference and this constant process. At least this is how we approach it. And again, I'm usually speak about large audience.
Mm-hmm. I believe that it's also different if people feel the disease, like pain or something that is going on, or fluid overload, versus something that they don't feel anything and it's high blood pressure, but they don't really feel any symptom, right?
Yeah, definitely. When you speak about preventative, one of the things is you must establish susceptibility. If someone doesn't know that he's susceptible to again, let's take the example of cancer, then you can speak about colonoscopy forever. It doesn't matter. Yeah. And if someone is already sick and takes his medicine, it might be completely different. And the side effect issue, cost issue, the issues are completely different. So exactly, yes, it's different decision models.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just offer a couple other thoughts. I think that from a technology perspective, ultimately we want to create something that's a fairly common generalizable framework, right? Whether it be we think about the kind of data inputs that come in, whether it be the sensors that are being used, the content, the way that all that is architected. And that being said, these different diseases are certainly unique. And so we would certainly look at diabetes, for example, and diabetes management is very different from cardiovascular disease. But I think that this is the challenge for the healthcare, the digital health industry, is that, as we all know on this panel, no one just walks in with a single disease, or at least they may start out that way, but it's quite likely that other comorbidities will exist. And so, and I understand from a product perspective why, one might come out with one use case, for diabetes, and then a second one becomes, joint disease and et cetera. But we need to start to quickly transition to understand that people walk in with multiple comorbidities, or at least risks of other comorbidities, and create experience that can kind of grow, so to speak, with those patient needs over time.
Yeah, so if I may say, so I agree with what everybody said. It is, as Asaf said, yes and no. But it is yes when it's coming from the perspective of technology and the business. The same principles, like we're developing something, we want to implement, disseminate, so we cannot, basically create some very specific use case. But we have to remember that in this panel, specifically, we're talking on patient-centered care. And now it's related because patient-centered care, and this is not my academic work, this is like the business. We have to understand that patient-centered, when you are developing a patient-centered tool, app, whatever solution that you're developing, it means by definition that you're tailoring the tool into the individual patient needs, perspective, expectations. And when I'm saying individual, is the patient and the family and the providers. So going back to Natalie, to what you said, what's the difference between oncology app or something that you want to engage oncology patients or cardiac patients? The population in cardiology, and it's not even cardiology, it's a subset in the cardiology that you're targeting, and the cardiologists are completely different from urologists. So when it's coming to patient-centered care, I saw too many companies in my life, I'm afraid to say, that follow more the principle of business and technology, which is completely true, didn't think, as R said, to engage patient early on, and not just to get their input, as we all do when we develop it. Really have PFAC, patient family, advisor throughout the journey, which is a huge thing. Not just to get input from them from time to time about their experience, what they think as a subject, they are part of the journey, and to tailor the technology to the specific needs and expectations of this subpopulation. Because one of the biggest barriers that, I don't know if we're going to have time, Natalie, to talk about it, for all this technology is to implement the acceptance of clinician, as I mentioned earlier. If we're not going to think about that, I saw too many technology that in the PowerPoint looks amazing. Really, nobody doubted the value proposition. When it came, if people use it, they didn't use it or accept it.
Thank you. Arash, you wanted to say something, I think?
I think a couple of trends that I find really interesting and I think are going to change the way that we look at patient-centric care. One is, as kind of Ricky said, around comorbidity and multimorbidity. And I think that's going to make us really think about how patients are going to use those common principles to make sure that irrespective of the disease condition or how many disease conditions, patients have a relatively common experience, and we use those common learnings across all the different therapeutic areas to deliver that kind of seamless experience for them. I do think it's important to make sure that that evaluation actually does happen on a therapy by therapy basis, because as we all know, patients will engage differently depending on if it's a chronic disease or a more acute condition, or if it's a condition that requires more of a lifestyle intervention or otherwise. But one other trend that I think is particularly interesting, I think is one that we are quite interested as well, and looking at how kind of patients interact with these platforms, is the issue around health inequalities. So when it comes to the use of those digital platforms, for us, what's really important is also looking at who is it who's using the platform, and are we seeing any differences in the demographics of kind of how they're using that platform? So we try and collect data on kind of the age cohorts of people who are using it, trying to see actually, are we making sure that that technology that we've got and the opportunity that we have to bring healthcare more widely to people is shared between kind of older cohorts, and then take that learning to try and see what we can do to make those products and services more engaged, and make sure that people, irrespective of demographic groups, are able to engage on that. It's something also that's coming up in a lot of the conversations that we have with providers around kind of health inequalities. And actually, it's been a really big focus of the work that we've done, for example, in COVID or in heart failure, where lots of the patients that are going to be potentially using or benefiting from these platforms might be in older cohorts, so not necessarily digitally native. And so it's really important to make sure that you've tailored the experience for them, and you've met their needs, and the interface is easy enough for them to use as well.
Yeah, that's definitely an important topic as well, the different demographics and the socioeconomics. Is anybody from the audience? I see that there's actually one remark from Yoav, that the patient is at the center of the blind spot. Do you want to ask something about it, or to comment on that? I'm not so sure what it means. I believe that it, says some kind of frustration, right? That's what I hear here. So I think that we can.
Natalie, I don't know if this guy talks about my theory, which I'm not going to explore, but I publish a few things. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I'm going to say it very briefly, because maybe this is what you're referring. When I search in a few countries, the situation, if patients are attentive to patient-centered care and using technology, what I found that the majority said that it's very important, but they are not doing that. And when you are searching why you think that it's very important to go to the gym, but you're not going to the gym, and you're asking this physician all over the world, why do you think that it's important to incorporate digital application, engaging patient, and you're not doing? They mentioned two things: awareness and training. They really saw that there's low awareness, they're very busy, and they don't think about it, and are not trained enough to use these technologies. So I don't know, and I call it blind spot. I don't know if this guy talked about this.
Yeah. I think that what bothers patients, right? I mean, we didn't bring to this panel actually the voice of the patient, and we agreed on that even before starting the panel. And this is the patient's voice. What I see here, it's mostly because that the providers, probably the way in healthcare we make decisions these days is that, it's hard to give a voice to the patient in the process of decision making. We hope that technologies will help us, but at the end of the day, it's still a human-to-human contact, and that's what I hear here. There's another interesting question that came up. How can we align, and this is Ronen, with all the committees that you're sitting on and the representative of the academia, and policies, not just academia, is how can we align patient-centered outcomes and value-based care that is more of the interest of the payers. So I believe that you have experience with that.
To the payers. It's a huge question. So basically, where should I start? So in order to address the payers, and I know that one of the topics that we said that we're going to cover is patient-reported outcome. So I will use very briefly short an example. I just finished a big project for CMS that they developed a new ProPM around care goal achievement for total hip and total knee replacement, and they accept that. And basically, for them to accept basically a digital application or prompts in this case, you have to align your development, your product, your survey, your prompts into the program, specific programs. And there's a lot of different type of programs, and this is why it's a huge topics. But basically you have to specify your technology or prompts into their program. So in terms of the age, in terms of the condition that you're addressing. A big issue is disparities, as people mentioned here, the gap. Basically gap. So basically, if they feel that there's duplicate technologies or measures that you want to incorporate, they will not take it. The environmental gap and gap analysis is huge. And obviously, big issues that we were dealing with is the economic piece. Obviously, we can talk about that, the ROI and the cost benefit, cost effectiveness that they would like to see the added value from economic standpoint there. And going back to Arsh and what he said about the academia, it's a big deal about to build the case there. And Natalie, I don't know if you want me to say some key point for the audience about research, but if not, I will let other people to talk.
Yeah. So I think the main question that came from the audience is do we have a way now to align those two things that look to us in a way a little bit contradiction? So patient-centered versus value-based care and reimbursement and whatever comes to payers. Is there a way that you see in where the policies are trying to be made and done that put it together that it to be the same interest? So putting patients in the center and trying to use technologies that give voice to the patients are also getting reimbursed and the value is felt by the payers.
The short answer is definitely yes. I was now in a GOA committee of about AI and where AI is going in the States, and they talked a big component about is a patient-facing technology, and they definitely support patient-centered care and value-based healthcare.
Mm-hmm. Perfect, thank you. So thank you so much. I see that there are no further questions. Itai, do you want to conclude our session?
I'll be honored to conclude our session. First of all, I would like to thank you, Natalie, for joining us. Again, we're very lucky to have you. And I would like to, again, thank our panelists, Asaf, Arash, Ronen, and Ricky for joining us tonight. This was a delight to have you. And I've learned a lot. I'm sure that our audience also got something out of it. And we'll be happy to share the video session with anyone who wishes to do so. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Natalie, thank you for joining us, and good night, everybody.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.